Hello everyone. So before we start the remaining questions of 2023 past year, I have two more questions from some of the past years that might be interesting. So in the first question states, let it be okay. The first question states, if price of y is 0, then what would be the shape of the budget line? So you need to think. So in this case, you are supposed to draw the budget line. Now, now if price of y is 0, the intercept would be given by m by px. So the budget line would start from here. Since y is 0, we can have infinite amount of y. So this would be the budget line. And in case if the price of x is given as 0 and the price of y is 0 and price of x was assumed to be positive, and if price of x is 0, price of y is something positive, then we can buy, this would be m by py. So this would be the shape of the budget line. I hope this was clear. Now looking at the second question states that, is it possible that in a two commodity case, both the goods are inferior? So we know for inferior goods, the income, as our income increases, the demand for the good falls. So now suppose this is the budget line. Let A and B be two inferior goods and we are consuming here. Now if our income increases, the budget line would shift towards the right, but the demand for both the goods would actually fall below this, might be here, here or here. So in this case, what happens is that you're not able to utilize all of your income. So that would not be optimum. Or else if you think from the perspective of a price change, suppose price of one of the inferior good falls. And if the price falls, suppose you were initially consuming here, now if the price falls, your real purchasing power has increased. Since this has increased, you will tend to purchase more of it, but since both of them are inferior, so if you are assuming both of them are inferior, you will reduce the consumption of both the goods and hence you will be left with some of the income. So this would not be an optimum point. Okay, now coming to the past years. So in the last video we have done till question 1 to 4. Okay, we were supposed to start with 5. Okay, explore. Oh, this is 6. Question 5th A, we have done 4th. Assume India is an importer of television and there are no trade restrictions. India consumers buy 10,000 televisions per year, of which 4,000 are produced domestically and 6,000 are imported. So I'll draw it here. Let this be the demand for Indian consumer. Let this be the supply by Indian producers. This is the price. This is quantity. This would be the equilibrium. But since it is given that Indian consumers are buying 400 televisions which are produced domestically. So this is the market for TV. So suppose this is the market prevailing price and this would be 4,000. The total demand is 10,000. Let this be price X. Suppose that a technological advance among Japanese television manufacturers causes the world price of television to fall by 100. So the world price has fallen by 100. So the new price would be X. This would be X minus 100. After the fall in price, Indian consumer buy 12,000 televisions. So the total is 12,000. 12,000 televisions, of which 2,000 are produced domestically. So this is 2K. So the imports are initially the imports were 6,000. Now the new imports are 10,000. Calculate the change in consumer surplus. So when the price was X, I'll draw with, okay, the consumer surplus was this area and the producer surplus was the one in yellow. Okay, so let this be A, B, then C, then D. So initially consumer surplus was not stands for initial A plus B. The producer surplus initially was C plus D. Let this be E, F and G. Now, so total surplus becomes A plus B plus C plus D. Total surplus original. Now new consumer surplus. Since the price has fallen to X minus 100, so the new consumer surplus is the area above the demand curve and the price level. So it would be A plus B plus C plus E plus F plus G. So A plus B plus C plus E plus F plus G. Whereas the producer surplus has fallen to this area only, D. So the total surplus new would be A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus F plus G. So what we can see is the change in total surplus is, this would cancel out, C, D cancels out, E plus F plus G. So what we know is that with international trade, our surplus is increasing. So this is increasing by this much amount, E plus F plus G, and we can calculate this as well. Okay. So we know the total surplus is increasing by this. First thing, this area, okay, this area is 100 into 6K, which is equals to, okay, 6 lakh. Now area E. Area E is half into base. Base is 2K into height is 100. So this would be 1K 1000. Similarly, G would be half into 2K into height 100. So this would be 1 lakh only. So the total surplus, this is F, E, G. So the total surplus would be 8 lakhs. The change in the total surplus. Now consumer surplus, we have the initial consumer surplus and the addition in the consumer surplus would be by this much amount. So this is the area of the trapezium, or you can just find this is 100 and length is 10,000. So 10,000 into 100, which is 10 lakhs plus G. So 10 lakhs is the area C plus E plus F, C plus E plus F, and G is the area half into 100 into 2k. So 1k, 1 lakh. So the total consumer surplus has increased by 11 lakhs. And with the help of this, you can find, so we know change in consumer surplus equals to 11 lakhs. So now you might be facing problem in solving for the producer surplus because you don't know the intercept. Now, since we know total surplus equals to consumer surplus plus producer surplus, so change in total surplus equals to change in consumer surplus plus change in producer surplus, then we have this equals to this. So change in producer surplus is change in total surplus minus change in consumer surplus. So this would be 8 lakh minus 11 lakhs. So the producer surplus is minus 3 lakhs. Okay, so we are done with the first part. Now looking at the second part of the question, it states that you're supposed to differentiate between price and cross price elasticity of demand. So price elasticity of demand is percentage change in quantity demanded due to, so it measures the degree of responsiveness of change in quantity demand due to 1% change in quantity supply, due to 1% change in price, due to percentage change in price of the own good. Whereas the cross price elasticity takes into consideration the percentage change in quantity demand of a particular good when there is percentage change in price of a related good. So elasticity, measure the degree of responsiveness or change in one thing due to change in some other. Suppose an increase in price of burger from 40 to 44. So price initially was 40, price new is 44. Results in an increase in demand for noodles. Okay, so we can infer whether they are, so this is for burgers. You would be able to infer whether they are complementary goods or substitute goods. So the demand increases from noodles from 100 quantity noodles 100 to 120. So percentage change in quantity of noodles is 120 minus 100 upon 100 into 100. So this would be 20. Whereas the percentage change in price is percentage change in price is 44 minus 40 upon 40 into 100. So this is 4 upon 40 into 100. So this is 10%. So the cross price elasticity would be 20 upon 10, which is coming out to be 2, which is greater than 0. So if cross price elasticity is coming out to be 0, greater than 0, which means if the price of the concerned good increases of the related good, then the demand of the given good increases. So this means both of them are substitutes. Because if one price of one of the other good is increasing, it is becoming cheaper to buy the alternative good. So both of them become substitutes. Whereas on the other hand, if cross price elasticity is coming out to be less than 0, then it is a case of complementary goods. Because if the price for, suppose, petrol increases, the demand for car would fall. Whereas if you are talking about substitute goods, suppose Coca-Cola and Pepsi. So if price of Coca-Cola falls, you will end up consuming more of Pepsi. So elasticity, cross price elasticity would be positive. Okay, so we are done with B part. Now this was 11. Now we'll move to 12. Okay, explain the concept of using concept of externality using examples. So you can tell what an externality is. It refers to an action of an individual which either positively or negatively impacts the other individual. So one of the example could be a mill which is producing paper, and it is disposing all the waste material or the hot water into the stream which is falling, and in the downstream there live individuals, so they have their houses there. Okay, so it would be like this. Mill is, so this is a river, they're polluting their water here, and downstream individuals live. And now, so this polluted water they would be consuming, and that could lead to inj- that would be a negative externality in the sense that they might harm their health in the near future. So this is a case of negative production externality, because they're producing something which is causing a negative impact on them. On the other hand, we can consider an example where, suppose your neighbor wakes up early in the morning and he or she sings really well. So it might be pleasing to your ear. So that is a case of a positive externality. Okay. Now, how can the government try to internalize the externality caused by education? So internalizing the externality means that the government, so the government will take action to alter your incentives in such a manner that an efficient combination is achieved. So suppose for education, what we have is, okay, so education is a merit good, and higher the education level of the individuals, higher education, this would lead to lower crimes. It will increase prosperity of the country. It will lead to less social chaos, because it is rarely likely that an educated person would indulge into a crime. So the chances are low for an educated person. So this is the private benefit. This is the private cost of education. This is the price of education. This is quantity of education, and this is social benefit. So education actually provides an positive externality because of these factors. Positive externality to the society as a whole. So the social benefit of education. So if we consider education, we are considering education from the perspective of a job market. But education would lead to these other things as well, which we don't consider from the perspective of an individual. So the private benefit is far less than the social benefit in case of education. So the government, so if the government doesn't intervene, this would be the quantity of education given. Now, the government can internalize this by providing subsidy. Must have heard about Beti Bachao Beti Padhao scheme. So these are the types of subsidies. So, Shiksha Abhiyan. So if you are providing subsidy to the individual, they will be demanding education more, and we will eventually get to this optimum level of point at which social benefit equals private cost, and at this point an efficient level of education is being provided to the individuals. Okay, now moving to the sixth question. I've done till 12. Okay, 12, 13. Sixth A part. Explore the relation between deadweight loss from tax, tax revenue, and tax size. So suppose a tax is being imposed on the sellers. This is demand, supply, price, quantity. So if a tax is being imposed, of T per unit, P, this is the price sellers receive, this is the price buyers pay. Okay, this would be T. Now first thing, between the deadweight loss. So we know this would be the deadweight loss. So look at this. If a smaller amount of tax is imposed, the deadweight loss is less. And if a higher amount of tax is imposed, the deadweight loss is more. So if T is high, deadweight loss would be high. Okay. Between tax revenue and tax size. So we know this. Now if T is high, we know quantity would fall. Quantity is falling irrespective whether, so we're not talking about the subsidies, we're talking about the tax only. So if a tax is being imposed, then quantity would fall. But the tax revenue would depend upon, so the tax revenue is T into Q. So it would depend upon which of these factors have a higher percentage change. So if tax is increasing, this is falling. So we need to take into consideration the percentage change in this. Okay, so it would depend on the slope as well. Okay, so you need to consider all these things. You can just mention we are not supposed to draw all these graphs. Okay, this one is important and you can draw two and then you can explain that it would depend. So the tax revenue is T into Q and it would depend on where Q is the quantity sold, and it would depend on which of these would have a higher impact. Okay, will the government be able to increase its revenue if it imposes tax on a good which has inelastic demand? So we know for an inelastic demand, elasticity is less than 1. So percentage change in quantity demanded by percentage change in price is less than 1. So percentage change in quantity demanded is less than percentage change in price. So we know this thing. Now, if a tax is being imposed on the inelastic good, so basically the price level is increasing. But the demand should fall, but demand does not fall by that much. So suppose price increases by 1%, but demand falls by 0.5%. And total revenue we have price into quantity. So price is increasing by 1%, but quantity is falling by 0.5%. So net total revenue would be increasing by 0.5%. So this states that, so this is the total revenue method, that if a tax is being imposed on a good which has inelastic demand, in that case the total revenue would rise, because with the increase in the price level, the quantity does not fall by that much. Okay, now moving to the next part. We'll move to the B part. Most of the contagious diseases can be prevented by taking an injection of vaccine in local hospitals. The decision to take the vaccine is purely voluntary, and some people choose not to go ahead with it due to high cost involved. What type of externality occurs for vaccine against highly contagious diseases? So, even if you remember during COVID, the priority was to get close to 80% of the population vaccinated, because this generates a positive consumption externality. Because, so suppose if I go and take a class and all of my students are vaccinated, then the chances, and even if I am not vaccinated, then the chances are very low that I would get impacted by it. Because since all of you are vaccinated, it is very unlikely that you would be having the virus, and so the chances would be far less that the virus would get transmitted to me. Okay. Use a suitable diagram to show the market equivalent quantity of the vaccine. Same as we did with the education one. Quantity of vaccine, price of vaccine. So this is the social cost, this is the private cost for you, private benefit, social benefit. So social benefit is more than the private benefit because you are able, so because of the positive consumption externality, because of which the other individuals who are surrounding us, they are better, they are better protected. If we have the vaccine, they are also better protected. So the output would be this, because we don't take into consideration the positive external externality, positive consumption externality we would be consuming here. But now the this would be the optimum point. But now the government can give you the subsidy. So in the case of COVID, most of us had like free vaccine available to us so that the social benefit could be achieved. So the optimum, the efficient point at which the our personal cost equals to social benefit, this would be achieved, and this further led to the efficient amount of vaccine being deployed. Okay, now suggest a method. Okay, so the government can give you the free vaccines, either subsidized or free vaccine is like total subsidization, so which ensure that the optimum output was achieved. Okay, now moving to the next, I have done 6A, 6B. Okay, suppose a consumer was consuming 100 units of apples initially when his income was 1000. So M naught was 1000 and Q naught corresponding to it was 100. Calculate the income elasticity using midpoint method. So if they have mentioned it specifically, you are supposed to use this only. If 110 units of apples are demanded when the income of the consumer falls to 800. So M1 equals to 800 and Q1 equals to 110. Okay, I'll write it here. Elasticity, income elasticity would be percentage change in quantity demanded by percentage change in income. So this would be change in Q by change in M into M naught plus M1 by 2 Q naught plus Q1 by 2. So this would be change in Q, we have 110 minus 100, this would give us 10. Change in M is minus 200 minus 200. So our income falls, we have started consuming more of it. And M naught plus M1, 1800 by 2, Q naught plus Q1, 210 by 2. 2 cancels out. 9 by 21 minus 9 by 21. So this is minus 3 by 7. Since this is coming out to be negative, which means as your income increases, you are consuming less of it. We can see from this as well. As our income has decreased, we are consuming more of it. So it would be the same thing as if our income increase, we are consuming less of it. So in this case, what we can infer is that apple is an inferior good. For the inferior good, we know the income elasticity is less than 0. For a normal good, it is greater than 0. For a luxury good, it is greater than 1. Okay, so we are done with this as well. So we are left with just the last question. Okay, explain the concept of, 7th question, this is the last one. Explain the concept of payoff and equilibrium in games of strategy. Now, payoff is the expected value that you will get from playing the game. And equilibrium, okay, I'll just show you how you are supposed to find the equilibrium. And equilibrium is the scenario where there is no tendency to change by any player given the given the actions of the other player. So if the action of the other player doesn't change, there is no tendency for you to change your action. Okay. Now we have already explained the concept of payoff and equilibrium. Suppose we take a game where there are two sellers in the market. Seller 1, seller 2. So both have the option of advertising or not advertising. Same advertising, not advertising. Now the first value would correspond to the player 1. Okay, now suppose if player 1 advertise and player 2 advertise. So this value states that if this particular box, the first box, this box states that if player 1 advertises and player 2 advertises, this would be the payoff for player 1, this would be the payoff for player 2. Okay. Then suppose if he advertises, this box, second box would mean player 1 is advertising but player 2 is not advertising. Now the last box, the third box means player 1 is not advertising, and if player 2 is advertising, 5 is the profit that the player 1 would get and 15 is the profit that the player 2 would get. So these would be the payoffs. And the last box indicates that if both of them don't advertise, both of them will get a profit of 7. Now looking at how we are supposed to find the equilibrium, so think from a very rational perspective. So suppose player 1 advertise. So we are in this bracket. So player 2 has the option either to advertise or not advertise. So if player 1 advertises, he'll get 10. If he doesn't advertise, he'll get 5. Because we are assuming it is given that player 1 advertises. So we know he will advertise because 10 is greater than 5. Now, if player 1 does not advertise, so now we are in this bracket, in this row. Now player 2 has an option whether to advertise, where he will get 15, or not advertise, where he'll get 7. So he'll prefer to advertise. Now think from the perspective of player 2. Now suppose player 2 is planning to advertise. We are in this column. Given this, player 1 would prefer to advertise because it is giving him a value of 5, whereas if he does not advertise, he'll get a value 5. Similarly, if the player 2 decides not to advertise, then the player 1 by advertising can get a value of 15. By not advertising, he'll get a value of 7. So 15 is greater than 7. So I have circled all those which would be the best optimum scenario. And in case if we have a box where both are in circle, so this would be the equilibrium. And in this case, both of them would earn 10 each and both of them would prefer to advertise. Okay. Now moving to the next part. How does a tariff on imports affect the producer's consumer and total surplus of the importing country? State the arguments in favor of restricting trade. Okay, I'll just draw it here only. Okay, so before that we can discuss about the arguments for restricting trade. First, it impacts the job market. Second, it could lead to higher dependency on a given country, because so if you'll see, with China we are highly dependent for a lot of electronic equipment, and which hampers our bargaining power when it comes to solving border disputes as well. So you can mention this. So the bargaining power falls uh, in case of border disputes and other agreements because we are highly dependent on it. One of the most important is infant industry argument. So this states that although argument a given industry in India has the potential to supply to the world market, but since it is not able to achieve the economies of scale due to unfair competition from other industries, so to safeguard those industries we need to put higher tariffs. And then there is MSMEs in India, so to need to protect them we need to have higher tariffs. Okay, so 3 would be more than enough. Okay, then there might be instances of dumping by foreign MNCs or by foreign companies. Dumping is the process where they are selling the good at a lower price at what? So the price might be less than the MC. So this is done to eliminate the competition. Or suppose USA is selling the good, a specific good there at rupees 50, so transforming into dollar, so it would be something in dollars, and if we transform it into rupees it is coming out to be rupees 50, but in India it is selling the same good at rupees 30. So this is a dumping. Okay, and then for national security reasons as well, you can restrict, you can have higher tariffs. So this would depend on this thing only. Yeah, more 2-3 points are more than enough. Okay, now we are supposed to draw the diagram when a tariff is being imposed, and then to see the impact on producer, consumer and total surplus. So initially, suppose we are talking about cloth industry. This is quantity of cloth, this was price of cloth. This is the domestic supply. This is the domestic demand. So suppose we are talking about India, and this is the equilibrium, but with trade the equilibrium price would be lower, it won't be higher, because and in that case the domestic producers will supply the domestic consumers only. So this is the initially the equilibrium price of the world market. Now, so the consumer surplus in this case would be this area. The consumer surplus is initial is A plus B, producer surplus initial is C. Now, if a tariff is being imposed, okay, I just need to see what they are doing. Okay, now a tariff is being imposed, so this will lead to increase in the price. So the price was E plus tariff rate. So with the imposition of the tariff, the producer surplus would become this area, and the consumer surplus would be the one in this. So we know the consumer surplus has fallen with the increase in price. Consumer surplus has fallen by this much amount. Okay, so we can do this as D E subparts as well. Okay, so this would also change. And the change in quantity is from this to this. initially this was being, so the total demand was this, now the total demand is this, and B, this particular area gives you the revenue which is being generated by the government. Okay, so initially when the price was E, producer surplus, consumer surplus. Producer surplus was when the price was E, it was O. I've written E here as well. Okay, when the price was E, the producer surplus was C. Consumer surplus was A plus D plus E plus F plus B plus G. Now, with the imposition of the tariff, when the price is E plus T, so the total surplus would be A plus B plus surplus originally, D plus E plus F plus G. Now, the producer surplus becomes, the new producer surplus is C plus E. The new consumer surplus is, since the price has increased, so the consumer surplus would be this thing, this triangle. I'll just shade it till this. So this would be A plus D. And the government, so this much is being provided by the domestic suppliers, and this is the total demand. So this is the total amount which is being imported. So a tariff of T on this would be there, which is given by this rectangle B. So for the government revenue would be B. The total surplus would be C plus E plus A plus D plus B. And change in total surplus, this would be C would cancel out, E would cancel out, A would cancel out, D would cancel out, B would cancel out. So minus of F plus G. These are the deadweight laws. This area, this is due to consumption externality, this is due to production externality. So deadweight loss which is occurring due to production is denoted by F. So because this lies on the supply curve, because the inefficient producers are also producing with the increase in the price level, and this is the inefficiency caused by consumption effect. Okay, so we have done the B part as well, done the A part as well. Now, during COVID pandemic, construction workers migrated back to their villages, and at the same time, the demand for construction of houses also fell due to uncertainty and loss of income. So this is a phenomena that you all must have observed, that construction workers went back to their villages, and demand for construction of houses also fell. Explain using demand and supply, how would this affect the market for worker and wages? Okay, so basically two things are taking place here. Firstly, the workers have migrated. Secondly, since they have migrated, so that would lead to a fall in the supply of workers. Second case, okay, so we have seen the workers have migrated, so which leads to fall in supply, and the construction of houses has also reduced, which leads to fall in demand. So we need to consider the labor market when there is both fall in demand and fall in supply. So both are falling. So we'll have three cases. Suppose this is demand, supply, wages, and quantity of labor. First, when fall in supply equals fall in demand, in that case, the wage would remain same, whereas the quantity of labor would fall from Q0 to Q1. This is the case when fall in supply, you are not supposed to write like this in the exam. Fall in supply equals, and not like this as well, fall in demand. Case 1. Case 2, when fall in supply is greater than fall in demand. Okay, so suppose this is the demand curve, this is supply, this is the wage quantity of labor. If the supply falls by a higher amount, suppose by this much, and the demand falls by a lower amount, so the new equilibrium would be this. So what we have seen is the wages have increased from W0 to W1 and quantity has fallen. Quantity of labor has fallen from Q0 to Q1. In the first case, wages remain same, quantity falls. Second case, wages increase, quantity falls, quantity of labor employed. Now the third case, I'll draw this here. Third case is when fall in demand is greater than fall in supply. So suppose this is demand supply. Now if demand falls by a higher, whereas supply falls by a smaller amount, then what we can see is initially this was W0, Q0, W1, Q1. So what we have seen is W0, so the wages has fallen and quantity has fallen. So if you consider all these three cases, you will get to see that the impact on wages is ambiguous. So that is, we cannot tell what the impact on the wages would be. Either it could remain same, increase or fall. But in every case, when there is fall in supply and fall in demand, look at the quantity. Quantity is falling, quantity is falling, quantity is falling. So, okay, you can write this. Okay, so we are done with this exam. Now, I'll be solving one past year of MME, since you have your exam of MME on 10th, and then 2 past year on stats. So for micro, I'll be solving these two only. If you feel that one more paper should be solved, you can just write it in the comments. I'll see if I have the time for that. Okay, thank you.